What if the greatest weapon in a war wasn't a missile, or a tank, or even an army? What if it was a single, overlooked soldier, whose quiet resilience held the power to turn the tide? We watched them in the background, the support staff, the medics, the ones who clean up the aftermath. We never expect them to forge the victory. But in the blood and dust of the Kalen Pass, one woman would prove that the deepest wounds forged the strongest steel. Her name was Anya Sharma, and she was just a medic. A corporal. To the men of the 3rd Battalion, she was a ghost in fatigues, her hands deft with gauze and sutures, her face a mask of disciplined neutrality. They saw the medic, but they never saw the warrior simmering beneath, the inferno of a past she kept buried deeper than any fighting position. Every day, after her shift patching up the shattered bodies the war sent her way, she would walk to the edge of the forward operating base, to a solitary, unmarked mound of stones. A grave with no name. She would kneel, clear the weeds, and place a single, wild desert poppy on the cairn. It was a silent ritual, a promise whispered to the wind. Major Kalen Vance saw her once, his lips curling in disdain. Still praying to ghosts, Sharma, he'd sneered. Maybe you should focus more on keeping my soldiers alive. He saw weakness. He saw a woman unfit for the grit and horror of the front. He saw nothing at all. The sky ripped open without warning. A mortar barrage, precise and devastating, walked its way across the compound. The first shell hit the command tent's generator, plunging the nerve center into flickering emergency lights and chaos. The second tore through the perimeter wall, and through the breach poured a wave of insurgents, their battle cries a sharp counterpoint to the screams of the wounded. The line was collapsing. Medics were supposed to stay back, to wait for the casualties to be brought to them. But Anya Sharma moved forward. She saw the breach, saw the disorganized panic of the green recruits pinned down by machine gun fire. Her training screamed at her to take cover. Her soul screamed louder. Dropping her medkit behind a concrete barrier, she grabbed the rifle from a fallen soldier. Her movements shifted. The medic's careful grace was replaced by a predator's economy. "You, on the 50 cal, suppressing fire on that ridge," she barked, her voice a raw command that cut through the din. "You two, flank left, use the craters for cover. Move when I move." They stared, shocked to hear orders from a corporal, a medic. But there was no time for doubt. In her eyes, they saw a certainty that eclipsed her rank. Colonel Marcus Thorne saw it too. From the shattered remains of the command tent, he watched the drone feed, his face a mask of granite illuminated by the screen's green glow. His command structure was decapitated, his officers dead or wounded. All he could do was watch his base get overrun. Then his eyes locked onto a small figure at the breach, a lone corporal orchestrating a defense with the chilling precision of a grandmaster. He watched her call out enemy positions before they fired. He watched her direct mortar support with 3 terse words into a fallen sergeant's radio. He watched a medic transform into a battlefield tactician and save them all. The assault was repulsed, the breach secured. When the silence returned, heavy and suffocating, Thorne's voice crackled over the comms, a single, gravelly order. "Get me Corporal Sharma." Now, Anya stood before him in the flickering light of the command tent, her camouflage smeared with dirt and blood, her posture ramrod straight. Thorne circled her, his scarred face unreadable. He didn't offer thanks. He offered a challenge. "That wasn't in any medic's field manual, Corporal," he said, his voice low. "That was textbook counter-ambush doctrine. The kind they teach to rangers. The kind that gets you killed if you get it wrong. Where did you learn it?" Anya's gaze didn't waver. "I read, it was a lie, but it was all she would give him." He saw the wall she put up, the ghost of a trauma she refused to name. He didn't push. He didn't need to. He saw what he needed to see. Fire Team Raptor was wiped out last night trying to recon the Serpent's Tooth Ridge, he stated, tapping a map. "Command wants to scrub the mission. I want another go." You're leading it, the other officers in the tent froze. Major Vance let out a short, incredulous laugh. Colonel, with all due respect, you can't be serious. She's a medic. A corporal. You're sending them to their deaths. Thorne's eyes, cold as chipped ice, settled on Vance. Major, I'm putting the soldier who just saved this base in charge. Her rank is irrelevant. Her ability is not. Your objection is noted. And overruled. He turned back to Anya. You'll have Sergeant Diaz and his men. Prove me right, Corporal. It was not a request. It was an order forged in desperation and a flicker of impossible hope. He had just handed the fate of the entire sector to the woman who prayed to ghosts. The 4 men of what was once Fire Team Raptor looked at Anya as if she were a landmine. Sergeant Rico Diaz, his face a roadmap of scars from a dozen campaigns, was the most openly hostile. He stood with his arms crossed, his jaw tight. No offense, Corporal, he grunted, the words, Corporal, dripping with condescension, but we're not a damn field hospital. We're door kickers. What are you gonna do? Bandage the enemy to death? The others snickered. Anya didn't react. She simply unrolled a topographical map on the hood of a dusty Humvee. The enemy expects us to take the valley approach, she began, her voice steady and devoid of emotion. It's a natural choke point. A kill box. The previous team went that way. She traced a new path with her finger, a high, treacherous route along the ridgeline, a path no one in their right mind would attempt at night. They'll have spotters on the valley, but their main force will be staged here, for the ambush. We're going to bypass them completely, using the blind spots created by these rock formations. We move silent, we move high, and we hit the objective, a communications relay. From the rear, she then detailed their infiltration, their exfiltration, the enemy patrol schedules, and the precise timing needed, all without looking at a single note. She had memorized the entire operational landscape. The snickering stopped. Rico stared at her, then at the map. He saw it. The audacious, impossible brilliance of it. It was a plan that was either suicidal or genius, and for the first time, he considered the latter. All right, Corporal, he said, the condescension gone, replaced by a grudging respect. Let's go for a walk. As they moved out under the cloak of a moonless night, Rico fell into step beside her. That play you called back at the breach, he said quietly. I saw a Tier 1 operator call the same play in Fallujah. Saved my whole platoon. Anya just nodded, her eyes scanning the darkness ahead. The alliance was forged not with words, but with the silent recognition of a shared, deadly craft. The mountain was a beast of shattered rock and biting wind. Every step was a risk, every shadow a potential enemy. Anya led them with an unnerving calm, her senses seemingly tuned to the rhythm of the darkness. She'd halt the team seconds before a distant sentry's cough echoed across the ravine. She'd point to a patch of loose scree that looked solid but would have sent a man tumbling to his death. They moved like wraiths, their trust in her growing with every silent, successful kilometer. They were hours from the objective, deep in hostile territory, when the feeling started. A cold prickle on the back of Anya's neck. The patrols weren't where they were supposed to be. They were shifting, converging. It wasn't random. It was a net, closing around them. Something's wrong, she whispered into her comms, her voice tight. They know we're here. They're hurting us. Back in the command tent, Colonel Thorne watched their progress on the screen, a knot tightening in his gut. He saw the enemy vectors shifting, forming a perfect pincer movement around Anya's team. It was too perfect. Major Vance stood behind him, his expression a mask of feigned concern. Looks like your prodigy walked them into a trap, Colonel, Vance said, a sliver of satisfaction in his tone. I warned you she wasn't ready. Thorne didn't answer. He zoomed the drone feed in on Vance's data slate, left carelessly on a table. For a split second, an encrypted outgoing message string was visible. A string that matched the enemy's comms frequency. The betrayal was cold, stark, and undeniable. On the ridge, the world exploded. The trap was sprung in the Devil's Jaw, a narrow canyon with no cover and no escape. Heavy machine gun fire erupted from concealed positions above, shredding rock and flesh with equal impunity. It was a slaughterhouse. One of the men went down, then another. They were pinned, doomed. It was a setup. Rico roared over the gunfire, laying down a desperate stream of covering fire. They knew. Anya's mind raced, processing angles, trajectories, options. There were none. This was an execution. A bullet ricocheted, catching her in the shoulder. She gasped, the impact stealing her breath as hot pain seared through her. Rico saw her get hit. He saw the last of his men fall. And in that moment, he made a choice. Get to the objective, Sharma, he yelled, shoving a fresh magazine into his rifle. That was the mission. Finish it. He stood up, deliberately drawing the full weight of the enemy's fire, a final, defiant act. Go. Expose the bastard who did this. His body was torn apart by a dozen rounds, but his sacrifice bought her the 3 seconds she needed. Anya scrambled over a ledge, tumbling down the far side of the ridge as Rico's last stand echoed behind her. She was alone. Wounded. And hunted. But the grief and the pain were burning away the medic, leaving only the warrior. The cold fury was a fire in her veins, cauterizing the wound in her shoulder, sharpening her senses. She was no longer Corporal Sharma, the medic. She was the sole survivor of Fire Team Raptor, and she had a promise to keep. She moved through the jagged landscape, a ghost fueled by adrenaline and vengeance. The pain was a constant, grinding reminder of her loss, of Rico's sacrifice. She tore a strip from her uniform, fashioning a crude sling, her movements economical and precise. She found the rifle of a fallen comrade, checked the action, felt the cold, reassuring weight of the scope against her cheek. Her past, the one she had buried so deep, came rushing back. The lessons from her father, a special forces marksman, before he and her mother were lost in this very conflict. The endless hours on the range, the breathing exercises, the mantra, one shot, one kill. The enemy hunters were confident, sweeping the area for a lone, wounded survivor. They were not expecting a ghost. From a ridge 500 meters away, Anya watched a two-man patrol. She controlled her breathing, slowing her heart rate until the world narrowed to the space inside her scope. The wind, the distance, the drop. She exhaled. The rifle cracked once. The first man fell. The second spun in confusion, and before he could raise his weapon, the rifle cracked again. 2 shots. 2 kills. She didn't feel triumph. She felt nothing but the cold, hard certainty of her path. She moved, flanked, and hunted them in turn, using their own tactics against them, an avenging phantom in the mountains. The communications relay bristled with antennae, nestled in a fortified bunker, crawling with guards. A frontal assault was suicide. But Anya didn't do frontal assaults. She saw what they didn't, a structural weakness, a fuel conduit running near the main support pillar. She had 2 remaining grenades and a single block of C4 from Rico's pack. It would have to be enough. Back at the FOB, Colonel Thorne confronted Vance. Their route was leaked, Major. An encrypted burst, sent just before the ambush, Vance paled. That's a ridiculous accusation, Colonel, is it? Thorne's voice was deadly quiet. Then you won't mind explaining why you just requested an F-16 strike on Raptor's last known position. Your exact words were, to sterilize a compromised location, or were you trying to bury your mistake? And my soldiers? Vance lunged for his sidearm, but Thorne was faster. The colonel's fist connected with Vance's jaw, sending him sprawling. As military police dragged the traitor away, Thorne's attention snapped back to the screen. A single heat signature was moving at the relay station. Sharma. She was still alive. Anya planted the charges, a deadly ballet of speed and stealth. As she set the timer, she patched her comms into the relay's primary frequency, broadcasting on an open channel. She knew Thorn would be listening. She didn't say a word about the betrayal, or the ambush, or her wounds. She spoke one name, clear and cold, a final testament. Vance. Then she sprinted into the darkness as the world behind her erupted in a ball of fire and twisted metal, severing the enemy's connection to its command and plunging their front into chaos. The war in the Kalen Pass turned on that single act of defiance. The intel Anya recovered before destroying the relay exposed a massive enemy offensive, allowing Thorn's forces to preemptively strike and shatter their lines. Victory was costly, but it was decisive. Anya Sharma became a name spoken in whispers, a legend born in fire. But the hero's welcome felt hollow. The medals and commendations were cold, empty things. She recovered in the field hospital, the physical wounds closing far faster than the ones on her soul. When she was finally cleared for light duty, she didn't go to the mess hall or the command tent. She walked her old path, to the edge of the base, to the solitary mound of stones. She knelt, the familiar ache in her knees a welcome penance. She gently placed a small, hand-carved wooden poppy on the grave. This was why she was here. This was the ghost she prayed to. The grave belonged to her brother, Liam, killed 5 years prior in a meaningless skirmish, abandoned by a commander who valued his career over his men's lives. That commander's name had been Kalen Vance. He had been a captain then. Her entire military career, her quiet endurance, her relentless self-discipline, it had all been a silent, patient hunt. Not for revenge, but for a different kind of justice. To become the leader he never was. To ensure no other soldier died for a coward's ambition. Her promise was finally fulfilled. A low, rhythmic whump 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 began to beat against the air, growing from a distant hum to an overwhelming roar. Anya looked up, shielding her eyes from the rotor wash. 3 Black Hawk helicopters descended from the sky, not to land, but to hover in a tight, powerful formation directly over her. Dust and grit swirled around her, a miniature storm. In the open door of the lead aircraft stood Colonel Thorn. His face was unsmiling, etched with the burdens of command, but his eyes held a profound, unwavering respect. He did not speak. He didn't have to. Slowly, with solemn precision, he raised his hand to his brow in a salute. In the doorways of the other 2 helicopters, soldier after soldier appeared, the men she had saved at the breach, the men who fought in the battles her intel had won. They, too, raised their hands in salute. It was a tribute from the sky, a warrior's farewell, and a hero's welcome all in one. They were not saluting a corporal. They were not saluting a medic. They were saluting one of their own, a leader forged in the crucible of loss and duty. Tears streamed down Anya's face, tracing clean paths through the grime on her cheeks. She slowly pushed herself to her feet, her wounded shoulder aching, and with all the strength left in her soul, she returned the salute. So I ask you, when you see the quiet ones, the forgotten soldiers in the background, do you see what's really there? Do you see the fire they hold inside? True strength isn't about the rank on your collar. It's about the resolve in your heart. Share this story if you believe in the warrior spirit that lives in us all. And tell us in the comments, who is a silent hero in your life?